Ding ding, the melodious bell sound echoed back and forth among the clouds. As the center of the 3,000 worlds, the 5 continents of the primordial era also welcomed the morning. The sun rose from the east, and all the stars retreated into the sky. In the northwest of Changshou, near the central Shenzhou, there was an inconspicuous corner. A large array that was as smooth as a thin silk and looked like an upside-down glazed bowl covered dozens of green peaks under the sunlight. The array wall refracted faint 7-color light, and visible spiritual energy was floating back and forth within the array. In the mountains, fairy birds and spirit beasts frolicked. In the clouds, occasionally a few figures appeared, thin smoke rose, and the sound of string music fell softly. On some open spaces next to the pavilions in the forest, there were also many figures sitting and breathing, flying and dancing, forming a picture of the fairy mountain. With the morning light, a white cloud slowly floated from the edge of the East Sea and flew directly to the vicinity of this large array. On the cloud stood 2 figures, one tall and one short. The tall one was an old Taoist with white hair, and he was accompanied by an 8 or 9-year-old girl who was smart and lovely. A white cloud leisurely floated in the heart, and the breeze accompanied it. Why worry? The old Taoist sang in a sigh after the Hongmeng opened the dragon and phoenix catastrophe. Tens of thousands of years have passed in a blink of an eye. No fairy platform can be seen, only the song of the 9 huas in the heavy sky. Help people cross the Yoha, laugh at people and gods to eliminate disasters. I ask you why you are attached to your hometown. Because the sages broke their bones to get their fortune. Linger, listen carefully. After the ancient war between witches and monsters, the heavens greatly promoted the human race. Our human chi practitioners gradually occupied most of the land outside the Beiju Luzhou, spread across the 3,000 worlds, countless small thousand worlds. But Nanfan Buzhou is the place where human luck is, so it restricts our entry and exit. This place is Dongxing Shenzhou, the first-class practice place in the 3 realms. Linger, look at these fairy mountains in front, aren't they beautiful and spiritual, very imposing? The little girl obediently nodded her head. Her eyes full of spiritual energy blinked slightly, and her face with some baby fat was filled with expectation. She responded, her voice was like a young bird chirping, melodious and pleasant, but still a little timid. Yes, it's very imposing. Being able to occupy a spiritual vein near the central Shenzhou, our sect is extremely powerful. The old Taoist stroked his beard with satisfaction and laughed. In his pride, he didn't forget to shake his dust. The little girl in the lotus skirt asked softly, Master, why don't we occupy a spiritual vein in the central Shenzhou? The old Taoist was suddenly asked, and he laughed awkwardly, there are too many powerful people in the central Shenzhou. It's not peaceful to occupy the spiritual veins there every day. It's better to be quiet and comfortable here, Linger. The little girl bowed her head respectfully, the disciple is here. Today, as a teacher, I bring you into this fairy gate. In the future, you must practice hard and must not be slack. Strive to achieve early cultivation, step into the fairy road, seek longevity, and get that free and easy Taoist fruit. The little girl tilted her head and asked softly, but Master, have you become immortal? Cough. The old Taoist covered his mouth and coughed. The teacher made some mistakes in cultivation a few years ago, but becoming immortal is only in this 10 or 20 years. Let's go, follow the teacher into the formation. You have to remember, our Taoism is called Du Xian Men, and the founder of the mountain is the famous Du Yizhenren in the current fairy god list. The Taoism passed down is, 1 Qijing Tian Dao. This is a very profound longevity magic. Do you remember all? This will be your foundation in the future, don't forget. Yes. The disciple remembered. The little girl nodded very seriously. The old Taoist shook his dust, and drove the white cloud towards the front array slowly, and also took out a palm-sized jade charm in his hand. I saw the jade charm flashing green light, and the mountain protection array slowly cracked a gap, allowing the old Taoist to bring the little girl into the cloud. As soon as this pair of master and apprentice entered the formation, several white cranes swooped down from the clouds. On them stood several young people in Taoist robes and colorful skirts. They were the disciples in the door who were responsible for patrolling the mountains at this time. They greeted the old Taoist and called him Chiyuan Master Uncle. After asking that this little girl was the new apprentice of the old Taoist, they stepped on the white crane and left chicly. The little girl's eyes were bright and shiny, reflecting the back of the 2 graceful female disciples. Master, when can Linger ride the fairy crane? When you have cultivated the 5 chi in your chest, you can control things and walk. The old Taoist Chiyuan stroked his beard and smiled. You see that it is a fairy crane, but it is actually a transformation of some magic weapons. Don't worry, you need to take it slow when you practice. The teacher will take you back to our peak first, and then handle various entrance procedures for you. Although there are only 3 of us in our lineage, we also occupy a mountain head in the door alone, which is a great honor. When Chiyuan said these things, his somewhat weather-beaten old face also showed a bit of pride. However, the focus of the little girl is not on occupying the mountain head at all. She counted with her fingers. 3 people? Master, but we only have 2 people. Oh? Didn't the teacher tell you along the way? Look at the teacher's memory. The old Taoist Chiyuan looked up at the few white clouds floating in the sky, and said lightly, you have a senior brother on top, the disciple the teacher received 100 years ago, and now, he is, a good talent who can stand alone, that is, he. The little girl stood on her toes. Master, you laugh so weirdly. Linger, you must remember, Chiyuan looked down at his precious disciple just picked up from a big thousand world, his face was serious, his eyes were full of light, and the wrinkles on his face seemed to form two big words, serious. The little girl was smart and clever, and she was quite clever. She knew etiquette and knowledge when she was a child. Seeing the master's seriousness, she immediately concentrated and listened to her training. The old Taoist suddenly sighed again, as if he was discouraged, and said in a low voice, your big brother practiced martial arts. There were some problems, he often talked nonsense, and there were some evil theories. You can ask him for advice on cultivation in the future, but never listen to him talk about those life principles. The teacher will teach you how to behave. The little girl blinked. Although she was a little confused, she still obediently nodded in response, yes. The disciple knows. The old Taoist breathed a sigh of relief, and gently shook the dust in his hand. Look, this is our Shaoqiang Peak. Following the tip of the dust, I saw a malnourished, dwarf mountain sandwiched between several tall peaks. Unlike the scenery of carved beams and painted buildings hidden in the forest, flying cornices and pagodas hanging on the top, in the door, this mountain is more simple and more simple, like a place rarely visited on weekdays. In the dense forest, you can see many rare birds and animals. The only few buildings are two thatched huts next to the small lake on the hillside, and a few medicine fields next to the huts. The old Taoist was content, driving the white cloud, and took the girl straight down to the hillside, and then past a simple array. The array here only has the effect of isolating external exploration. Due to the restrictions of the Du Xian Men rules, only the forbidden area in the back mountain is set with a defensive array falling in front of the thatched hut. The white cloud dissipated on its own. The little girl's cloth boots stepped on the short grass that was still covered with dew, soft and soft. The fragrance of grass and trees came with the breeze, making her unconsciously intoxicated in the beautiful scenery of the lake, and her delicate little mouth couldn't help but exclaim, the sunlight in the mountains just fell, and the lake was sparkling. A few spiritual fish in the water jumped out of the water with crystal water droplets, as if they were greeting the new Qi practitioner. The old Taoist looked at the little disciple's reaction with a smile, and said loudly, Changshou, why not come out to meet your junior sister? The little girl instinctively looked at the closed thatched hut, and a little expectation rose in her heart. The cultivation brother in the fairy gate must be a wise and martial artist, a fairy with a graceful demeanor, and must be like the heroic heroes who slay demons and demons in the fairy tales she has heard since she was a child. However, the thatched hut was quiet, and there was no movement inside. The old Taoist called again, longevity? What are you hiding in the house? Are you still embarrassed? Strange, the breath is clearly inside. In a low murmur, the old Taoist pulled the little girl towards the thatched hut, pushed open the two wooden doors, and a strange medicinal fragrance came oncoming. The old Taoist's eyes widened and he saw the source of the breath he had sensed. That was a small paper man placed on a wooden bed. Oh! The old and the young suddenly started to sway forward and backward. The old Taoist's face changed, and he pulled the little girl and retreated quickly, and couldn't help cursing, damn it, it's the soft fairy incense mixed by Changshou. The little girl suddenly felt dizzy. Although she was pulled by the master, she immediately fell to one side. Splash, water sound, just about to fall. The little girl couldn't help but look at the water sound. On the lake, a slender figure is in the posture of soaring into the sky. He is only wearing a pair of black trousers. His strong and well-proportioned muscles are shining faintly under the sunlight. His wet long hair is shaking out two bright water curtains. The sun was just right, and the young man's still handsome face was reflected in the little girl's eyes, making her little face red instantly. But she hasn't practiced yet, how can she resist the onset of the drug? And she passed out completely before she fell completely, her little face still red. Sure enough, it was like her own imagination, a heroic big brother. Lan Lingyi had a dream. In the dream, she was taken as a disciple by an old immortal, and even brought back to the immortal's residence, where she met a handsome senior brother who jumped out of the water. Wait, this seemed not to be a dream, but what just happened? In her drowsiness, Lan Lingyi heard her master's voice again, only this time he sounded more fierce, quite different from the kind old immortal she remembered. Scoundrel! Are you getting too big for your boots? Now you even dare to scheme against your master. Then, Lan Lingyi heard that gentle and elegant voice, Master, please calm down. I was just taking precautions and happened to be practicing the water escape technique, so I set up this anti-theft arrangement and went to the lake to practice. I didn't know that you would come back suddenly today and couldn't remove it in time. Please forgive me, Master. The way her senior brother spoke was so unhurried that one couldn't help but want to listen to him more. Immediately after, Lan Lingyi heard her master let out a long sigh. Beside the bamboo bed, the old Taoist clapped his hands, complaining helplessly, I say, Changshou, this is within our sect, what use is such an arrangement, an anti-theft? Our Shaoqiang Peak might as well change the character Qiong to poor. Who would come to rob us? Changshou, Is this the name of her senior brother? Such a simple Taoist name, revealing her senior brother's simple and pure wish. Lan Lingyi suddenly found that although she could hear the outside noise, she couldn't open her eyes at all. Her eyelids were very heavy, and she had no strength in her body. Her senior brother spoke again, his voice so warm, making her feel like her mother. Master, your words are somewhat biased. There are dangers within the sect. The competition between the peaks has been fierce in recent years, and the elders of the sect don't care much about it. As the only, oh no, one of the only 2 disciples of our lineage, necessary caution is needed. Originally, our Xiaoqiang peak had a low presence in the sect and no backing, and maybe someone would want to take away our land and plot against us in secret. Just after her senior brother finished speaking, she heard the old master complain again. The rules of our Duoxian sect are strict. How could such a thing happen? Enough, enough. I can't argue with you all day long with these crooked theories. And I don't see your cultivation improving. You wait here for Lingyi to wake up, take my token, and take her to the main peak to register, and get the identity card and monthly supply of a formal disciple. Really, I'm so angry. The old Taoist swept his sleeves and got up from the bamboo chair. It seems that the effect of the medicine hadn't passed yet, and he stumbled again, making his old face turn red. I'm so angry. Master, please slow down. Humph. I'm going to retreat and comprehend the supreme Tao. Master Qi Yuan stomped his foot and disappeared into the thatched hut in a puff of green smoke. In the blink of an eye, there was a clatter from the thatched hut next door. Obviously, the Taoist was unsteady after lifting the spell. Sigh, the young man standing at the door let out a soft sigh. With this sigh, the eyes of the girl lying on the bamboo bed opened a crack, and she saw the figure of the young man who was thinking, her senior brother is really tall. Master's foundation is still a bit weak, the power of the soul is insufficient. I'm afraid it will be difficult to withstand the tribulation of becoming an immortal. What do these words mean? Fatigue came again. Lan Lingyi unconsciously closed her eyes again, and soon heard the increasingly clear footsteps. Although she was only 9 years old, because of her early spiritual intelligence and being born in a worldly noble family of the human race, she learned etiquette from an early age, and she was a little bit understanding and half knowledgeable about various things. I end this situation of being alone with a man, and a strange man getting closer and closer. To her, this was considered disrespectful in Lan Lingyi's view, but if it's her senior brother, who will be like a real brother in the future, it seems, there's nothing. Lan junior sister, I am your senior brother, Li Changshou. I'm going to alleviate the potency of the soft immortal fragrance now. If you can hear me, please don't consider me a pervert. I'm a man with upright values. What nonsense am I talking about? She just started her cultivation, how could she resist the power of this drug? Pervert? Values? These specialized terms related to cultivation are really hard to understand. As expected of a Qi practitioner elder brother. Lan Lingyi tried hard to respond, not wanting to be too impolite in front of her senior brother, but she had no strength at all, only her mind was active. Suddenly, she felt a large hand gently resting on her forehead, a refreshing coolness seeping in, instantly flowing through her body, making her feel extremely comfortable. Elder brother is healing me. Lan Lingyi's thoughts were somewhat chaotic, her mind floating in the clouds, hazy yet vivid. Li Changshou looked at the young girl lying flat on the bed, his brows furrowed in thought. Despite his master mentioning several times about wanting to take on another disciple, and him having mentally prepared to welcome a junior sister or brother, there were still a few matters he cared deeply about. Let's inspect her soul. Li Changshou released a strand of cool energy, gently touching the source of Lan Lingyi's life. Her soul and body are perfectly harmonious, there's no sense of discord, she hasn't been possessed. Her aptitude seems decent too, a combination of water and wood attributes, but her temperament is yet to be seen. At this age, her personality should have already formed. Hopefully, she's not the type to stir up trouble. However, judging by her looks, she might turn out to be a beauty. Many troubles have been caused by beautiful women since ancient times. This could potentially be a point of conflict that needs to be avoided. Let's check if there's any demonic seed or something hidden within her. Yes, this is a necessary check. Although the chances are slim, we can't rule out this tiny possibility. Prevention is always better than cure. Meanwhile, feeling the large hand leave her forehead and slowly slide over her body, the drowsy Lan Lingyi's small face reddened slightly. Elder brother. Is this not too? That place is off limits. Li Changshou nodded. After his meticulous examination, there shouldn't be any problems with his junior sister. She hasn't been possessed, there's no demonic seed in her, she hasn't been cursed, and she indeed has the potential to cultivate. The entrance examination, officially passed. Next up is planning a training course for the junior sister, which also requires careful preparation. Hopefully, the junior sister is not the type who likes to cause trouble. This way, the probability of him getting involved in karmic issues can remain the same as it is now. Li Changshou sat by the bed a little lost in thought, and then he chuckled dumbfounded and muttered, however, I probably understand why there were so many lollies in my previous life. So cute, who can withstand it? Lolliton, cute, previous life. Although Lan Lingyi couldn't understand, she felt that her master was indeed right. Senior brother was a bit strange, perhaps the cool and refreshing breath had played a role, and Lan Lingyi regained a trace of her strength all over her body. She couldn't help but want to open her eyes, her small mouth slightly opened, and she let out a soft snort. From blurry to bright in front of her, Lan Lingyi finally met her senior brother up close. She was indeed a face with sharp edges and became more and more handsome, even more beautiful than the guards around her mother. That's right, the expression on this senior brother's face at this moment is a bit scary. Senior brother's eyes are so scary. Goo, Lan Lingyi swallowed her saliva, weak, helpless, and pitiful, just as the young monk sitting by the bed asked, did you hear everything just now? Lan Lingyi suddenly felt a little flustered and trembled back, no. What's wrong with senior brother? Have you made my senior brother angry? Is there anything dissatisfied with her, senior brother? Senior brother. The young man by the bed slowly stood up and looked down at the little girl with pink carving and jade carving. His gaze hesitated a little, but he quickly spoke in a deep voice, look at me. Don't mention the sentence I just said to anyone. Oh, okay, Lan Lingyi whispered, her face flushed with confusion. Subsequently, she saw her senior brother shake his head, slowly stand up and walk to the window, looking out of the window in a daze. His name is Li Changshou, and when he became a teacher, he also maintained the nickname Changshou, under his own insistence. It's not much different from what Lan Lingyi guessed. Li Changshou was thinking that he could live longer, preferably with the same longevity as heaven and earth. At this moment, Li Changshou is recalling the information he revealed while talking to himself just now. The biggest flaw should be the 3 words previous life. I'll go. For over 100 years, there have been countless defenses, but I never expected to reveal my secret in front of the new junior sister. I kept the secret in my heart for too long and couldn't help but start talking to myself. Turning her head and glancing at the little girl trying to sit up on the bed, Li Changshou touched her chin. Sure enough, we still need to kill people and silence them. Kill people and silence them. On the bamboo bed, Lan Lingyi, who had already struggled to sit up, happened to catch sight of her senior brother's cold gaze and couldn't help but tremble. Senior brother, never mention what I just said to anyone. Lingyi remembered, never mention it to anyone, including master. Okay, senior brother, okay, let's take an oath first, in the name of Wushang Avenue. In the slanting sunlight, the girl sitting on the bed gradually covered her forehead with black lines. Under the supervision of the technical guide next to her, she lifted her small hand and began to narrate the 1,000-word-long, considering various situations and prerequisites, the great oath. Was that really a grand oath about confidentiality just now? As she stepped out of the thatched cottage, Lan Ling's eyes, which were as black as pearls, seemed to lose some of their color. She seemed a bit disoriented and her steps were somewhat unsteady. Here, a hand came over, holding a light green pill in its palm. Li Changshou said in a gentle voice, this is a yuan consolidation pill. It is non-toxic and has a very mild medicinal effect. Even ordinary people who have not yet started their cultivation can use it to replenish their vitality. Thank you, senior brother, Lan Ling responded timidly, took the pill, and put it into her mouth. The pill melted instantly as it came into contact with her saliva, like a mouthful of sweet spring water. She couldn't help but let out a soft moan, instantly perking up. This little junior sister is indeed quite cute. Li Changshou reached over and gently stroked her head, saying softly, now you are also a part of little Cheong Peak. I will take you around to familiarize yourself with the environment. After the master gets over the effects of the medicine, cough, after the master finishes his meditation, he should teach you the introductory heart method. If you have any questions about cultivation, you can always ask me. Thank you, senior brother, Lan Ling replied in a small voice. Li Changshou walked towards the lake with his hands behind his back. Let's first take a look at the spiritual fish in the lake. These are all good things and are an important part of our little Cheong Peak's assets. Lan Ling hurriedly followed, stepping on the soft grass, and looked into the lake. The lake water was exceptionally clear, and the fish inside were frolicking carefree. Look, Li Changshou pointed to several fish with colorful scales. Aren't they beautiful? Yes. Lan Ling nodded heavily, also attracted by these spiritual fish, constantly making soft exclamations. She then heard the gentle voice of her senior brother. When you cultivate your first breath, we will have a spiritual fish feast. This kind of fish with colorful scales is called tuna. Not only is it delicious no matter how you cook it, but it can also enhance the quality of the first spiritual breath for chi cultivators. Lan Ling instantly had 2 black lines on her forehead. Do we have to eat them? What else would we raise them for? Li Changshou raised his left hand, waved his sleeve, and threw out a handful of rice grains, shouting, dinner time. A group of spiritual fish swam over from all directions, making the lakeside instantly lively. Lan Ling watched with sparkling eyes. Here, the big hand handed over a small cloth bag. This is fish food. If you like it, the task of feeding the fish every day will be handed over to you. Okay. Thank you, senior brother. Long Ling happily replied, took the cloth bag, poured out some rice crumbs from inside, and sprinkled them onto the lake surface. Looking at her careful manner, it seemed as if the fish food would break the beautiful scales of the spiritual fish. Li Changshou, standing by her side, smiled faintly. Now he had less work to do every day and could spend more time on cultivation. From this perspective, having a junior sister was quite nice. Long Ling tossed handfuls of fish food into the water, and the spiritual fish in the water were swimming around happily. Li Changshou waited for a while, flicked his finger slightly, and two small water columns erupted from the lake. Two tuna were pushed out of the water and captured by him in midair. He wrapped them in lake water into a water ball and put them into his sleeve. Long Ling, who was standing next to him, was stunned for a moment, and asked in a small voice, "Why did senior brother put the fish in his sleeve?" "To give as gifts," Li Changshou said indifferently. "Don't look at us as a cultivation sect, the ways of the world are the same as in the mundane world. We are going to register soon, we can't go empty-handed." Long Ling blinked her eyes. Although she didn't quite understand, she still obediently said, "I'm sorry to trouble senior brother." "It's no trouble, when you're done playing, come over here." Li Changshou, with his hands behind his back, floated to the herb garden not far away. Long Ling looked at the group of fish by the lake, waved her hand gently at them, and quickly followed. Next to the herb garden, Li Changshou was briefly introducing the types and effects of the hundreds of spiritual herbs inside. Long Ling was trying hard to remember them all, and she, who didn't know that she had been designated as the new gardener by her senior brother, was listening to her senior brother's warm voice, and couldn't help but think of her mother who was always gentle and soft spoken. The scenery on Little Cheong Peak was nice, but there wasn't much to introduce. Li Changshou took his newly arrived junior sister for a couple of rounds around the thatched cottage, designated a new area for her to build her thatched cottage, then summoned a cloud and took Long Ling to the mountains. Long Ling couldn't help but ask, "Can senior brother also ride on a crane in the sky?" "Yes, as long as you can control objects." Li Changshou lightly tapped the cloud under his feet, and the cloud suddenly let out a light cry. A large crane spread its wings and carried them forward slowly. Long Ling's eyes were instantly bright, and she grabbed her senior brother's robe, looking down and exclaiming in admiration. "But compared to these, there are several things you need to remember when flying in the sect in the future." "What are they, senior brother?" Li Changshou cleared his throat, organized the teaching plan he had prepared earlier, and decided to start from the small things and guide his junior sister. So, he said solemnly, "First of all, the height of flying in the sect should not be too high or too low. High places often have some senior people passing by, and it is easy to offend them if you encounter them head-on. You have to remember, junior sister, that if you are noticed by these senior people, there is a 50% chance of leaving a good impression, and a 50% chance of leaving a bad impression. Leaving a good impression does not necessarily bring any benefits, while leaving a bad impression will inevitably leave some hidden dangers. Therefore, it is best not to be noticed by them, just pay a respect when you meet them, and do your own things well." "Okay, Ling will remember." "Also, you can't fly too low, because it's easy to fly over some mountains with buildings. Although the sect seems peaceful on the surface, there is also competition in secret, and many people care about some trivial rankings. If you fly too low, you are likely to be targeted by them. So, after 100 years of exploration, this senior brother has summarized a suitable height for flying within the sect, which is to rise 30 to 50 feet from our residence. At this height, you will rarely encounter fellow disciples, let alone senior people." As Long Ling listened to her senior brother's long talk, she tried hard to remember all of these in her heart, and couldn't help but look up at her senior brother's sharp face. Senior brother is indeed very handsome, and he considers things very thoroughly. Accompanied by her senior brother's constant reminders, Long Ling was brought to the main peak of the Du Xian sect. This peak is located in the center of Du Xian sect's peaks and is the most upright and tallest peak. It is like a sword piercing the sky, hence it is also called Patian Peak. On the top of Patian Peak, there is a fairy palace where the sect leader, elders, and peak masters discuss matters. It is usually a no-fly zone, and sect disciples cannot approach without special permission. Halfway up Patian Peak, there is a group of buildings built along the mountain. There are many figures moving around here every day. After being introduced by her senior brother, Ling also learned that this is the office of the Du Xian sect where sect affairs are handled. All disciples from various peaks have to come here to receive their monthly supplies and regularly report their cultivation progress. Walking on the bluestone road here, Long Ling was surprised to find that she and her senior brother seemed to be invisible. There were all kinds of fellow disciples here, but none of their gazes fell on them. Even if occasionally someone's gaze would look this way, it would smoothly pass over. The voice of Li Changshou sounded in Ling's ears, still tirelessly instructing, "Ling, you have to remember, by not attracting attention and reducing your own sense of existence, you can best avoid getting involved in karma. I have improved a method of hiding one's own breath, and I will teach it to you after you have started your cultivation." "Okay, thank you, senior brother." "No need, this is what senior brother should do," Li Changshou replied with a smile. leading Lan Ling past the roadside and heading towards the hall with the plaque by Fan Hall. Inside the hall, Lan Ling watched as her senior brother took out those two spiritual fish and chatted with a middle-aged Taoist who was in charge of registration in the sect. She couldn't help but blink her eyes. Senior brother, he's very mature. Linger, do you know what qi is? Qi is the pulse of heaven and earth, the breath of all beings. All practices begin with qi, and all supernatural powers are transformed by qi. The circulation of inhalation and exhalation is the beginning of the celestial cycle. What I am going to pass on to you today is the basic chapter of the One Qi Rectifies Heaven from our Taoist school. This chapter is the method of building the foundation of Tao. It is a top-tier foundation building method in the 5 continents. Even if you want to practice other methods in the future, you can use this method to build the foundation. Linger. Linger? I'm here. Under the shade of a willow tree by the lake, Lan Linger retracted her gaze that had unconsciously strayed to the lake, and stuck out her tongue anxiously. Elder Master Qi Yuan turned his head to look at the center of the lake and smiled. Your senior brother is comprehending the art of water escape, don't let him distract your mind. Listen carefully, I am going to explain the method to you. Okay. Lan Linger focused her mind, carefully listening to the profound method of cultivation from her master, trying hard to understand the meaning of these sentences. However, after a while, Master Senior brother has disappeared. Lan Linger's eyes widened, pointing at the lake and whispering. Qi Yuan turned his head to look, and immediately smiled helplessly, sighing, that's the art of escape, come on, let's go inside to practice. Your senior brother has a keen interest in various escape techniques, this should be his 6th escape technique. Master, what is an escape technique? Qi Yuan stroked his beard and smiled. Escape technique is a type of magic that allows the caster to quickly traverse different environments. The art of water escape allows you to move quickly in water, faster than a fish. Look, isn't your senior brother appearing on the shore? The speed of this escape technique is quite impressive. Lan Linger stood on her toes to look, just in time to see her senior brother's slender figure emerging from the distant shore, standing quietly on the water. She whispered in admiration, senior brother is amazing. If we're talking about escape techniques, your senior brother can indeed be called impressive in our Taoist school. Elder Master Qi Yuan showed a helpless expression. If he could put half of his effort in other techniques as he does in escape techniques, I would be a little more at ease. Lan Linger blinked, already following her master into the thatched cottage. Elder Master Qi Yuan casually summoned 2 cushioned seats, closed the wooden door of the thatched cottage, and lightly tapped his disciple's head with his dust whisk. Focus on the lecture. Oh, Lan Linger quickly sat cross-legged. This time she was finally able to calm down. On the lake surface, Changshou stepped on the waves, walked a few steps, and then his figure turned into a stream of water and disappeared. After a few breaths, he appeared in the center of the lake. The water escape technique is successful, but the speed is a bit slow. However, when using the water escape technique, I can merge myself into the water, which can resist some bombardment of magic weapons. Water benefits all things without contention, it can carry 1,000 boats without collapsing, it is indeed worth further exploration. Changshou stood with his hands behind his back, pondered for a while, and then continued to stroll on the water. Every few steps, he disappeared directly on the surface of the water. After his continuous exploration, he soon no longer needed to walk on the water surface. As long as he touched the lake water, he could directly use the water escape technique. Changshou was still not satisfied, and continued to ponder deeply, seemingly completely unaware of the passage of time. It was not until the afternoon that Elder Master Qi Yuan called him back. Linger has not yet opened her grain, and it's not okay to always eat full-stomached elixirs. Later when you build the thatched cottage, also set up a stove. Before Linger opens her grain, make her a meal every day. Changshou bowed his hand in agreement. As you command, master. I'm going to practice. If Linger has anything, she can talk to her senior brother. Yes, master. Lan Linger imitated her senior brother's actions, and responded to her master with a respectful salute. However, her little belly made a gurgling sound at the wrong time, making her face instantly turn red. Elder Master Qi Yuan laughed, turned into a wisp of smoke and disappeared. Changshou also smiled, but his gaze turned to the lake to avoid making his junior sister too embarrassed. Senior brother. Was that smoke escape that master just used? Smoke escape? Changshou was stunned for a moment, then laughed dumbfounded. That's illusion technique, mainly used for self-preservation when facing enemies. It can also hurt and trap enemies. It's one of our master's specialties. You want to learn it? You have to wait until your cultivation level has some foundation, and then ask master to teach you. What about senior brother's water escape? Can Linger start practicing it now? Water escape will be even later, you need to wait until you step into the realm of Qi refining and God transforming to practice. The 5 elements escape techniques are all like this. Don't think too much about it now, you just started practicing and you're a greenhorn Qi refiner. Lan Linger blinked. Senior brother, what does greenhorn mean? Basically, it means a clumsy beginner. Li Changshou squinted his eyes with a smile, leading Lan Linger towards the vacant land next to the medicinal herb garden. What do you want to eat? There are many wild animals on our mountain. If you don't have any dietary restrictions, I'll recommend something for you. Wild game. Senior brother, are we going to eat these herbs for lunch? Of course not. Li Changshou stretched out his right palm, a stone flew from the side, spun around in his palm, and then flew straight into the forest with a sharp whistling sound. Lan Linger couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, while the forest was in a flurry, startling a group of birds. Soon, a tricolor feathered brocade chicken flew over, the stone embedded in the chest of the brocade chicken. This spirit bird was already dead. The stone went out and returned, and was casually thrown by Li Changshou into the grass on the side, making Lan Linger's eyes shine with admiration. In no time, Li Changshou had skillfully set up a grill by the lake, plucked and gutted the brocade chicken, took out his own collection of several jars of seasonings, and began to tempt his junior sister with saliva. Senior brother, what magic was that stone just now? Why could it fly back after flying out? It's just a simple manipulation of objects, Li Changshou smiled. It can only be considered a small technique. In today's cultivation world, or rather the entire 5 continents, the most popular way of fighting is to refine some magic weapons, infuse your own cultivation into the magic weapons, and use the magic weapons to hit people. This kind of object manipulation technique is the basis for controlling magic weapons. You just started to practice, and naturally you don't understand these things. I'll tell you slowly in the future. Okay. Lan Linger knelt on the side, her small hand straightening a strand of hair by her ear. She whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "It seems, senior brother's magic is really amazing." Li Changshou shook his head slightly, educating her solemnly, "You're wrong, junior sister, this is not amazing. Like master and I, we are both chi refiners who have not yet ascended to immortality. This primordial world is too brutal. Becoming immortal is just the beginning. After becoming immortal, you have to go through 7 or 8 major realms to barely be considered a master. Each realm can kill countless so-called geniuses and prodigies. The ancient desolation has existed for far too long, with countless top experts making it exceedingly difficult for newcomers to rise to the top. Moreover, cultivation is only the foundation. Even if 2 people are in the same realm, the one without a powerful magic weapon is doomed to death." Lan Lingyi shrank her neck, her senior brother's words echoing in her ears like a demonic spell, making her hairs stand on end. Li Changshou's voice continued to resonate. "Even if you have a powerful magic weapon, if you don't have powerful divine powers, you're still doomed to death. Even if you have both magic weapons and divine powers, if you lack personal luck and attract disasters, you're still doomed to death. In short, death." Li Changshou showed a kind smile and praised, "Good, you're learning fast." "But senior brother," Lan Lingyi asked quietly, "isn't our cultivation for the sake of immortality and invincibility, and then to roam freely in the world?" "No, you might be mistaken. Cultivation is not a noble pursuit." Li Changshou shook his head and sighed softly. "We cultivate to become stronger, to face various harsh environments, and to survive. Immortality is just a state of cultivation. Once you reach this state, you won't die a natural death, but various disasters can still take your life." "So, senior brother," Lan Lingyi asked nervously, "how can we truly survive?" Li Changshou slowly turned the spit in his hand, answering methodically, "Firstly, avoid karma. Try not to get involved in strange things. The best way is to cultivate at home, don't wander around, and don't have too much contact with others. Of course, it's hard to achieve this. For example, you and I, because we have the same master, we are entangled, and this is a cause. In the future, if either of us has trouble, the other will be involved, and this is an effect. So, even if we try to avoid karma, we can't completely avoid it. At this time, we need to judge the situation and make reasonable judgments to avoid danger. If you've done all you can and you're still in danger, then there's only the second way to cope." "The second way, what is it?" Lan Lingyi wiped the saliva from the corner of her mouth. The golden chicken on the spit, already 7/10 cooked, was beginning to emit an irresistible aroma. "Your trump card." "Trump card? What's that?" "The so-called trump card refers to the various abilities you hide." Li Changshou tore off a piece of chicken and handed it to the impatient Lingyi, continuing his lesson. "If you have 100% strength, you can hide 30% and only show 70% to others. In this way, if someone wants to plot against you, you can catch them off guard. To be more specific, if you have any powerful spells, divine powers, or magic weapons in the future, hide them as your trump card. Don't let people know, and throw them out at a critical moment, and they will be the final word." Even your own cultivation can hide some, which is also a trump card. Lan Lingyi quickly finished the piece of chicken, her eyes shining as she savored the taste. Licking her fingers, she pondered her senior brother's teachings and asked softly, "But senior brother, what if I still can't beat the opponent after using all my trump cards?" "That's the third way." Li Changshou flicked his finger, and the cooked golden chicken was neatly disassembled into pieces of roasted meat filled with spirit, floating in front of Lan Lingyi. "The third way is actually very simple, that is, run." Lan Lingyi blinked, although most of her attention was attracted by the roasted meat, she was still trying to understand her senior brother's words. Li Changshou calmly said, as the saying goes, as long as the green hills are there, one need not worry about firewood. Being impulsive will only bury a bright future, and life only has one precious chance. Of course, those with excellent character and temperament might have the luck to get a second chance. Let's get back to the point. If you want to escape from a strong opponent, you need a very strong responsibility. Here, the role of escape methods should be emphasized. The more escape methods you learn, the more hope you have of surviving. As the sun set, the aroma of meat filled the air. The clear lake, the young Chi practitioner tirelessly taught his newly initiated junior sister. The little girl, gnawing on pieces of roast meat, was gradually engrossed. This lesson will undoubtedly influence her entire immortal life. However, although little Lingyi kept marveling at how sensible her senior brother's words were, on reflection, she felt something was slightly off. Apprentice sister. Here. Listen to the question. Yes. With a wave of his robe, Li Changshou, the girl sitting cross-legged on the lakeside grassland, was suddenly startled and immediately became fully alert. Suppose you, my apprentice sister, are at the 9th stage of Qi refinement and God transformation. While flying on the road, you suddenly find a deserted place where a cultivator of the 6th stage of Qi refinement and God transformation is forcibly insulting a female cultivator in the realm of essence refinement. What would you do? Here are 3 options. A. Rush up and kill him, you are the incarnation of justice. B. Throw a magic weapon from a distance to hit him, then leave calmly, disrupting his interest. C. Pretend you didn't see anything and slip away. Lan Lingyi blinked. The question stem and options seemed to contain things she couldn't understand at her age. Li Changshou reminded her with a smile, it's a single choice question, make your pick. A. Lan Lingyi answered uncertainly. Li Changshou said calmly, how do you know that this person has not hidden his cultivation base, but deliberately revealed the 6th stage of God transformation, but is actually a master of the return to void realm? Usually, those who dare to do such disgusting things without any cover are definitely despicable and shameless people. How can you pin your hopes on his honesty? Then, Lan Lingyi frowned. B. My apprentice sister, don't forget that you are also a female cultivator. Li Changshou sighed. If under the various assumptions of A, this beast sees you, the beautiful apprentice sister, and becomes even more beastly, won't you even get involved? Lan Lingyi's face flushed, and she felt a little dizzy. She said weakly, but master, the option C is not what we cultivators should do. My father told me something similar when I was very young, that we siblings should be able to stand up and punish the strong and help the weak. Father said that if everyone sees injustice on the road and doesn't help, then once the victim is oneself, won't it? No, my apprentice sister, you have to remember, if it is in a peaceful and friendly environment, your thinking is absolutely correct. But the primordial era is not a peaceful place. There are many masters here. Qi practitioners often fight for a magic weapon, a spirit root. Most of the cultivators who can survive are ruthless and cruel. Li Changshou stood with his hands behind his back, gazing at the lake, and sighed, it's hard to survive in this world with such kind-hearted and chivalrous thoughts. What we need to do is not to do evil, not to be evil, but we don't have to stop evil. Instead of playing the hero when you're not capable enough, it's better to keep alive, wait until you're at the top of all beings, able to make rules, and rewrite the survival environment of the weak in the primordial era. So, do you understand? Yes. Lan Lingyi nodded heavily, her eyes full of brightness. Just then, the pair of master and apprentice did not notice, a wisp of green smoke floated out from a thatched hut not far away and quietly drifted behind them. Li Changshou said solemnly, apprentice sister. Now give you another chance to choose, say it quickly and firmly. If a male cultivator insults a female cultivator, what should you do? Lan Lingyi's eyes were full of light, her voice was not loud, but she shouted firmly, see, pretend not to see. Slip past. Well. Li Changshou couldn't help but give his apprentice sister a thumbs up, feeling a sense of emotion in his heart. If the teaching continues like this for 2 days, in a few years, he won't have to worry about his apprentice sister causing trouble and implicating him. Having an apprentice sister who knows how to keep a low profile and survive is really. Suddenly, a cold wind blew from behind, and the hairs of the pair of master and apprentice stood up. An old and cold voice suddenly sounded from behind, Li Changshou. Grit, grit. This was Lan Lingyi's teeth chattering. Li Changshou twitched the corners of his mouth and turned his head to take a look, immediately squeezing out a smile. Master, have you finished your retreat? Are you going to start today's hard teaching for my little apprentice sister? Master, let's talk nicely, master. What are you doing with your dust whisk? I'm also your own disciple. You can't abuse the elder one just because you have a younger one, master. Scoundrel. Master Qi Yuan's beard and hair were flying, his eyes were bulging, and he picked up his dust whisk and hit him. You dare to use the wood escape to hide. You're asking for it. Qi Yuan was even more furious. He lifted his dust whisk and chased after him. Li Changshou's figure floated back, avoiding his master's pursuit again and again. Master Qi Yuan began to use his magic. The dust whisk in his hand grew wildly, and there were shadows of the dust whisk swept everywhere by the lakeside, but Li Changshou was like an eel, always able to find a gap to escape. Master, I'm just doing this for the good of my apprentice sister. We, the Du Xian men, belong to the Rinjiao immortal sect. How can we have such a strange junior with all sorts of crooked ideas? Isn't it because you, master, have a discerning eye, Pa? Today I'm going to clean up the house, oh my. I'm so angry. Master, you're not handsome when you're angry. Under the willow shade, Ling Yi, who was initially nervous about seeing her master wanting to beat her master brother, was gradually amused by her master and master brother's chasing and playing. She did notice that her master didn't really try to hurt her master brother, and her master brother's dodging figure was also very relaxed and casual. After chasing for a while, it seemed that her master brother slipped and fell to the ground. Her master pounced on him and directly pinned him there, using the dust whisk to fiercely beat her master brother's buttocks, making a rhythmic noise. A moment later, after lecturing his eldest disciple, Master Qi Yuan rose to his feet, straightened his disheveled Taoist robe, and bellowed at his disciple lying on the ground, "Reflect well on your actions for your master. From now on, you are not allowed to teach your junior sister how to behave. Go and finish building the thatched cottage for your junior sister." "Ah, yes, I obey. Ling Yi, come over. Let me teach you the Tao and forget all the crooked theories your senior brother taught you." "Oh." Ling Yi weakly responded, glancing anxiously at the swollen buttocks beneath her senior brother's robe, and then noticed Master Li Changshou's right hand hidden in his sleeve. That right hand gently waved to her, making a thumbs-up gesture. Ling Yi felt a little relieved, but seeing her senior brother lying in a mess on the grass, she couldn't help but giggle and quickly followed her master's retreating figure. Her steps became lighter and lighter, and she gradually began to run. Li Changshou lay there and sighed deeply. A white cloud drifted by, slowly lifting him. Master really did hit him. Li Changshou touched his buttocks, took a breath of cool air, and sighed again. If he had known that he would really be punished by the master, he wouldn't have let the master catch him. But it wasn't right either. He had to consider the reputation of the master. After all, now the master's hope of becoming immortal was slim, the pressure was great, and it was quite hard. From the magic that the master just revealed, it was clear that he was overeager in his cultivation. Sigh, he should think of a way to increase the chance of the master overcoming the heavenly tribulation. Li Changshou scratched his head, lying on the cloud and lost in thought, slowly drifting towards the third thatched cottage which was almost finished. At night, lying in the newly built thatched cottage by her senior brother, feeling the softness of the grass mattress beneath her, Ling Yi tossed and turned, unable to sleep. These days, it was like living in a dream. At the age of 9, she was chosen by an old immortal while shopping at the market with her mother, and was taken as a disciple by the old immortal. Although her parents were reluctant to let her go, it was a great opportunity. If she succeeded in her cultivation, her clan would also benefit. So, after holding a banquet at home, she came to the Du Xian gate with many admonitions from her mother. Then, she met her somewhat strange senior brother. Her senior brother had a lot of theories that sounded reasonable, but always seemed a bit off. The master repeatedly warned her that her senior brother was a weirdo and told her not to learn from him. But she always felt that her senior brother was a very powerful Qi practitioner. There weren't too many rules and ceremonies in the mountain, and the lake and mountain were full of delicious food. Cultivating Tao was also an interesting thing, at least not as boring as she thought before she came. Of course, the happiest thing was to have a barbecue with her senior brother, feed the fish together, wander in the mountains, find some extremely delicious wild food to fill her little belly, then sit quietly by the lake, and listen to her senior brother's crooked theories. Would the days in the future be like this? Curled up in a blanket of unknown material, Ling Yi took a deep breath, turned over and faced the window. Suddenly, she felt as if there was a shadow moving in front of her. She opened her sleepy eyes slightly, but was instantly scared awake, her petite body involuntarily trembling slightly. Outside the window, Li Changshou was lying on a white cloud, waving gently at her. "Night tutoring, young girl." Ling Yi blinked, then nodded slightly in her blanket. Now, please listen to the second question. Well, her senior brother really was a weirdo. So, 10 years later. Longevity, do you still remember the mantra I taught you yesterday? Recite it for me. Li longevity. How can a Qi practitioner be so afraid of death, not willing to fight for it? How can you gain opportunities? TSK, how quickly the master changes his face. It seems that these two memories are decades apart. When he first entered the door, the master was so kind and friendly, but decades later, the master, is super fierce.li longevity laughed dumbly, and then found that his Taoist body seemed to be sleeping, and the fatigue from continuous cultivation was still there. Is this dreaming? It's been a long time since I had a dream. After a high level of cultivation, the number of sleep times has been reduced a lot. Every time I sleep, it's like this. Because of the long-term high-intensity cultivation, I accumulate too much fatigue. Even if the mana is full, I need to sleep to relieve the pressure of the soul. Old Tian, don't pretend to sleep. Get up for me, old Tian. I heard that guy's horse shouting again, the siren sound from far to near, still so clear. Li Longevity showed a bitter smile, as if turning over in the dark, facing those memories that came rushing. He reviewed the pictures like a horse watching flowers, as if watching another person's life story. I end this story, there are no flying monks, no high gods. Maybe there are gods, but they have always been unknown. The protagonist of the story is called Tian Zhuguang, which takes place on a blue star called Earth. Tian Zhuguang. From the name, you can see that the person who named him had a strong expectation, hoping that he could add glory to his ancestors. His family environment is relatively affluent, belonging to the type that can eat and wear without doing anything for a lifetime. He is also spirited, outstanding in his studies since childhood, tasted the taste of first love in high school, had 2 girlfriends in college, and spent shameless days together. Later, he graduated from university. With a startup capital given by his family, he ambitiously set up a small company, and within a few years he made some achievements, achieved financial freedom, and began to plan his happy and fulfilling life. Then, he met the girl who decided to spend his life with him, quickly fell in love, and the wedding date was put on the agenda, but fate seemed to have played a joke on him. The calm in the first 28 years seemed to be an illusion. All the conflicts in this story were concentrated in those short months. Before getting married, he went for a checkup and was diagnosed with incurable late-stage cancer. He had noticed the signs of cancer before, but he had never taken it to heart. For an adult man with a good psychological capacity, this blow is also fatal and unacceptable for a while. But Tian Zhuguang quickly accepted this, and within a few days he had made a detailed plan for his last life. His personality was like this. First, he had a fight with his fiancée, then hired a model, and staged a cheating drama, which made his fiancée leave him, and as compensation, bought her some insurance. Although he was beaten up by 2 cousins of his fiancée, it was nothing. Then he transferred his company to his second sister, sold the car and house he had worked hard to get, and saved half of his savings for his parents' old age. Although the 2 old men didn't need his money, it was always a heart of a son. Then, he donated the rest of the money to some Hope primary schools. The rest of his life was on the way to send these donations, as if to accumulate virtue and do good deeds for his family. When he felt that his body was no longer good, he made a phone call to his best buddy, asking this guy to take him to stroll around the high school, look at the internet cafe that had been demolished, and look at the playground that had been replaced. Regretted. 28 years have already experienced half of a normal life, and he has never suffered since he was a child. And he has not missed the happiness he should have. Don't regret it. He has always been trying to meet the expectations of others, all the way to the golden age of life, looking at the happy family, having children with the woman he loves, but suddenly came so, if there is an afterlife, it's okay to be poor and bitter. Just live a little longer when you meet the right person. Even if you give me 10 more years in this life, it's better than hanging up now. Tian Zhuguang said this, the fat man behind the wheelchair with red eyes, holding back without crying out. The fat man cursed, don't think about the afterlife. Where is there any afterlife? Let's go to the hospital for another check. We have changed 3 hospitals, fat man, you let me suffer less. Tian Zhuguang smiled helplessly, leaning on the wheelchair and taking a light breath, feeling the last bit of strength being drawn from his body. There was a strong unwillingness in his heart suddenly, just like the last flutter of the fire of life. He used all his strength to stand up by the handle of the wheelchair, but before he could take a step forward, he fell to the ground. Old Tian, don't pretend to sleep. Get up for me, old Tian. The memory stopped abruptly, with a slight gap. This gap lasted for about 3 years, and the picture behind it became clearer. A little boy wearing open crotch pants and braided horns running in the grass, and then quickly growing, until he was 7 or 8 years old. He was bumped into by an old fairy and became a disciple. It's pretty ordinary, just a common transmigration. Li Longevity sighed lightly, sealed these memories, and put them in the deepest part of his heart. No matter what, these are the things he treasures most. Then, Li Longevity sighed in the dark, turned around, feeling his gradually no longer tired body. For a while he didn't want to wake up, although it's nice to live another life, and thanks to the God who opened a back door for him, whether or not it really exists. But, can he go back to modern life? Even if modern times can't go back, it's okay to arrange a prosperous Tang, a strong Ming period of ancient times. He can still live a peaceful life, live a happy life, and by the way, 3 wives and 4 concubines. Suddenly, he was exiled to a world of cultivation, and it was the most cruel, merciless, and unreasonable world of cultivation. Ancient Hongmeng, 15 years after becoming a disciple, through the classics in the Immortal Gate, and the various stories told by his master, Li Longevity finally understood the big environment in which he was in. It was also that day that he lit up the green button of the autism key. Yes, He came to the ancient times mentioned by later generations, the Hongmeng in mythological stories, and was born in an era between the two great disasters of Hongmeng. Looking forward along the historical trajectory of Hongmeng, the impact of the witch and demon war is still continuing. Although the human race is thriving, the power of the remnants of the demon race is still quite strong, and there are human race saint mothers and one of the 6 saints. With Nuwa's guarantee, the demon race relies on the junctions of the 5 continents, making dreams of revival, and fighting with human race chi practitioners for years. The 6 saints have already returned to their positions, and each other's calculations, for a little face, can let countless creatures die back and forth. The 2 big guys of the Western Church, Jain and Zhuandi, actually control the barren spiritual veins of the Western Nehezu, preaching their Western Church doctrines. Everywhere, constantly digging the corners of the Tao Gate, among the 3 teachings of Taoism, people, elucidation, and interception are all rising. The elucidation of the 12 golden immortals has just become famous, and has become a hot topic for Qi practitioners in recent thousands of years. The momentum of the interception of 10,000 immortals has also been set up, and strong people from various backgrounds have gathered under the seat of the master of the Tongtian sect, arguing with the elucidation here every day. But fortunately, they have not really rubbed the electricity. This is the best era of Taoism. The 3 teachings are thriving. The human race protected by the 3 teachings is thriving. The gates of Taoism are all over the Middle God continent. The 3,000 worlds are all traces of the 3 teachings. The Taoist tradition is spread throughout the 3 realms. The primordial spirit Tao and the human race Qi practitioners have become the mainstream of Hongmeng. This is also the worst of times for common Qi cultivators, with fierce competition for the path of ascension. The heavenly court, recently established, entirely acted at the mercy of the 3 religious immortals. The 5 continents and 3,000 worlds had no order whatsoever. For a Qi cultivator to grow, it all depended on their own hard work, and luck. Luck, in particular, played a significant role. The only thing Li Changshou felt fortunate about was that even though his master was not particularly strong, or to be accurate, not strong at all, he at least had some background from the human sect. However, Li Changshou seriously suspected that the founding ancestor of Duxian Gate was probably just 1 or 2 nominal disciples of the true man Dui. Regarding the true man Dui of West Kunlun, the only thing that Li Changshou could think of was that this immortal had trained disciples during the Battle of Gods, and became the Ahum in the 2 generals of Hum and Ha. The rest were just some unfounded rumors. Most likely, true man Dui was also a nominal disciple of the Saint of Supreme Clarity, ranking quite low among the immortals. Back to himself, without background, divine power, or luck, how could he make a name for himself in this era? What a joke. It would be good enough just to survive. So, from that year on, Li Changshou set a goal for himself: to survive, to live as long as possible, to strive to avoid all kinds of calamities, and to live peacefully. Through his hard-earned second life, becoming famous and making a fortune had nothing to do with him. No matter how hard he cultivated, could he compete with the big shots of the 3 religions? No matter how hard he tried to find opportunities, could he compete with those so-called sons of calamity? His destiny had already been carved with the words, cannon fodder. Why not just hide in the mountains, accumulate cultivation, and live leisurely? Even if he couldn't attain the fruit of longevity, as long as he lived past his due lifespan peacefully, that would be worthy of his second life. So, from that day on, Li Changshou's ultimate goal was to live until he died. For this goal, he, elder brother. Elder brother. Elder brother, why are you sleeping here? The main peak is starting to gather. We will be late if we don't go now. A pleasant call came to his ears. Li Changshou stopped his wild thoughts and slowly opened his eyes. What caught his eyes was a delicate young girl's face, bright eyes, willow brows, jade nose, cute ears, and thin pink lips. These already outstanding features were perfectly matched on her goose-yellow face, causing people to feel affectionate towards her furrowed brows and full of aura when her eyes moved. Who are you, beautiful girl? Elder brother. The girl pinched Li Changshou's nose and gently rubbed it. You're still in a daze from sleep. Ah, Lingyi, how did you grow up so quickly in the blink of an eye? Li Changshou laughed. His body floated off the grass and stood up straight 3 meters away. I've been on the mountain for 10 years. Lan Lingyi stomped her foot, her mouth slightly pouting, unspeakably cute and charming. Not only did she have a beautiful face, but her figure had also fully matured now, with slender legs and a thin waist. The immortal dress on her perfectly highlighted the enchanting curves of her body. Her skin was as white as snow, her black hair soft and intoxicating. Ding, a bell came from the clouds. Lan Lingyi urged, elder brother, quickly ride the cloud. We will really be late if we don't go now. Li Changshou frowned. Can't you fly? Lan Lingyi stood tall, confidently replied, I can't fly fast. All right. Li Changshou seemed somewhat unwilling, summoned a white cloud, and jumped on it first. Lan Lingyi's eyes were a bit sly, her pink boots lightly tapped on the grass, floating to Li Changshou's side. Just as she was about to reach out to hold her elder brother's arm, she was subtly avoided by Li Changshou. Li Changshou sternly said, don't forget the 3 rules. I know. Elder brother, you really are petty. Lan Lingyi complained, moved half a step away from him in a huff. That's more like it. Keep a 3-foot distance in public. You are now the rising star of our Duxian Gate, the fairy Ling Yi whom thousands of male disciples are fond of. I don't want to be cursed to death by them. Li Changshou stretched, looked back in the direction of the thatched hut. Is Master still in retreat? Yep, Master is in retreat, and he could break through to become an immortal at any time. Maybe when we come back from this trip, Master will already be an immortal. Lan Lingyi laughed lightly, her big eyes filled with a bit of anticipation, then she gave her elder brother a blank look, her cheeks slightly red, she pursed her lips, and whispered, normally, you never participate in these outings organized by the sect. This time you came, is it because you are worried about me? A big hand suddenly appeared in front of her, followed by Li Changshou's indifferent face, and a rapid, clear series of responses. No, please allow me to decline, you're a good girl, I've always treated you like a little sister. Humph, I didn't say anything. So annoying. I'm ignoring you. Lan Lingye's forehead was full of black lines, she turned around and gave her elder brother an angry back. Her little fist clenched and unclenched. Li Changshou smiled calmly, looking at the white clouds on the horizon, calculating the time and angle for him and his junior sister to enter the gathering place. However, all the calculations were in vain, with a dazzling junior sister by his side, trying to lower his presence. It was getting harder and harder. When Li Changshou brought Ling Yi to the front of the Hall of 100 Mortals, hundreds of figures had already gathered here. From a distance, young men and women in Taoist robes and long skirts were seen chatting and laughing. Their appearances were pleasing to the eye. The number of female cultivators here was no less than that of men. Most of them were pretty and slender, each with their unique charm. However, a few stood out among the rest, just like cranes among chickens, or stars among the moon. For instance, Lan Ling Yi standing next to Li Changshou. Isn't that Ling Yi from Xiaoqiong Peak? She's becoming more and more beautiful. I heard that her aptitude is quite good. In just 10 years since she joined, she has already reached the 8th stage of qi cultivation and is about to break into the realm of spirit transformation. I heard that some of the supreme elders want to take her as a disciple. We don't have such luck. Who's the man beside her? Oh, he must be her senior brother. There aren't many people on Xiaoqiong Peak to begin with. This guy doesn't seem to be within the top 300 in the sect, so I don't remember him. I remember, his Taoist name seems to be Changshou. That Taoist name is indeed, plain and unadorned, quite unique. Don't gossip about disciples from other peaks. Behave yourselves. If the elders hear this, they'll think our peak lacks discipline. The whispers reached Li Changshou's ears, but he seemed indifferent, a warm smile on his face. He didn't glance around, but took Lan Ling Yi to report in the hall first, then went to a corner where no one was and waited. As the bell rang continuously, more and more young cultivators flew in from various peaks. Today was the day of the once every 5 years disciples outing organized by the Degree Immortal sect, aimed at letting the disciples gain some worldly experiences and enhance their understanding of cultivation. This event was open to all official disciples of the sect, and there were as many as 12 destinations to choose from, catering to disciples at different stages of cultivation. The Degree Immortal sect accepted disciples in cycles of 200 years, which was considered as one generation. Among this generation of disciples, the fastest in cultivation progress had reportedly reached the 6th stage of the returning void realm, catching up with many old people in the sect who had cultivated for 1,000 years but whose aptitudes were mediocre. Qi cultivation, spirit transformation, returning void, returning Tao, these were the 4 major realms before becoming an immortal, which also determined the strength of one's power after becoming an immortal, as well as the progress of cultivation and the limit of the path to immortality after becoming an immortal. Like Lan Ling Yi, who had cultivated to the 8th stage of qi cultivation in just 10 years since she joined the sect, naturally attracted a lot of attention. The 2 disciples stood 3 feet apart, under a tree, attracting many gazes. Most of these gazes thought that the relationship between the 2 siblings wasn't very good. Ling Yi twisted a tender bud from a willow branch and twirled it around her fingers, wanting to say something but hesitating. The first rule of the 3 agreements: maintain a 3-foot distance in front of outsiders. The second rule of the 3 agreements: don't chat idly if there's nothing important when you're outside. Brother, where are you going? Guess. You won't tell me again. I've asked you for several days. Ling Yi huffed and muttered under her breath. Anyway, wherever you go, I'll follow. I'm going to keep a close eye on you. Li Changshou smiled indifferently, his lips slightly parted, his voice directly entered Lan Ling Yi's ears, using the method of sound transmission. Junior sister, you're now a promising cultivator. You need to learn to face some difficulties independently. Lan Ling Yi said righteously, I'm following Master's orders to keep an eye on you, so that you won't cause trouble when you go out and tarnish the reputation of our Xiaoqiong Peak. Li Changshou smiled slightly, without saying anything more. When the bell struck 6 times, more than 60 cultivators flew out of the Hall of 100 Mortals and stood in the air. Their appearances and temperaments varied. Some were old with white hair and wrinkled faces, some looked like young girls in their prime, but most of them presented themselves as mature and stable. These 63 disciples slightly released their aura, and the front of the Hall of 100 Mortals immediately fell silent, while the figures in the air were surrounded by a wisp of immortal light. These were the immortals from various peaks, responsible for the protection mission of this outing. A crane's cry was heard, and a white crane with a red crown flew out of the clouds. On it sat a thin old man. If one looked closely at the old man, they could see auspicious clouds accompanying him in the background, 2 green lotuses floating around him, and his demeanor was extraordinary. His aura was not revealed at all, but it gave people a sense of dignity. This was the deputy sect leader of the degree immortal sect, Master Zhongyu. It was said that he was a celestial level expert, ranking among the top 10 in the degree immortal sect in terms of cultivation. Master Zhongyu didn't give any lengthy speeches. With half-closed eyelids and slightly parted lips, his voice echoed around the main peak. During your outing, always remember the sect rules, uphold the prestige of our degree immortal sect, and don't do anything that would disgrace the sect. This outing has a total of 12 locations. Recently, there have been monsters causing trouble to several tribes along the coast of the Eastern Sea. I hope you can exterminate the monsters and protect our kindred. Elder Gu, let's begin. After that, Master Zhongyu rode his crane away without lingering, and the disciples of the sect all bowed in farewell. An old man standing in the air in front of the hall bowed and took the order, then loudly said, "Those who are going to the coast of the Eastern Sea to slay monsters, come to the far left. Your cultivation level must not be lower than the 6th stage of Qi cultivation. Those who go there will be rewarded according to the number of monsters they slay." The disciples below immediately started to move. Nearly half of them went to the far left of the hall, which instantly became somewhat crowded. This was a tradition of every outing. Among the 12 locations for the outing, one was always relatively low in difficulty and danger, but with generous rewards. Lan Ling-yi turned her head to look at her senior brother and found that his legs indeed didn't move. Her senior brother's goal was indeed not to gain benefits. "Sister, with your still budding cultivation, it's best to follow the majority," Li Changshou advised through a transmitted message. Lan Ling-yi slightly curled her lips at the corner, standing still with her senior brother. Ge Elder continued to announce, "Those who are going to the southeastern border of Central Shan State to slay demons, please wait on the right side. Your cultivation should not be lower than the 8th level of Qi refinement." This time only a few tens of disciples moved, but they were all well cultivated, all in the realm of spiritual transformation. Just like that, amid Gu Elder's continuous calls, one disciple after another moved, choosing their destination. The minimum requirement for cultivation for the places Gu Elder announced later kept increasing. When Gu Elder announced that the minimum requirement was the 2nd level of spiritual transformation, Lan Lingyi looked at her senior brother with eyes full of resentment. Her real cultivation was just at the 2nd level of spiritual transformation. "Senior brother, where exactly do you want to go?" Li Changshou still remained silent with a smile. Soon, there were only 23 people left who hadn't moved. The places for practice that hadn't been announced were also only 2. These 23 people, except for this pair of brother and sister in the corner, were almost all that celestial seeds of each peak, the ones who were being heavily cultivated in this generation of disciples, and were all high in the disciple ranking. Ge Elder glanced at Lan Lingyi, then called out, "Those who are going to practice on the Linyan Island in the Eastern Sea, wait in the hall. Your cultivation should not be lower than the 9th level of spiritual transformation." Among the remaining 20+ people, 17 moved at the same time. Their auras were all at the 2nd or 3rd level of returning to void, causing a wave of admiration. These 17 disciples quickly flew into the hall. At this point, only 6 people remained unmoved in the field. The crowd's gaze quickly focused on a young girl in a fiery red fairy dress with a wide-bladed treasure sword on her back. The girl stood quietly with her eyes closed, like a celestial being forgotten by the world, as if a few big words were floating around her. No trespassing for the living. She was one of the most famous disciples in the Du Xian sect. Not only was she beautiful and graceful, but her cultivation talent was also astonishing. At this point, she had already revealed her aura, which was at the 4th level of returning to void. She had only been in the sect for about 60 years. With such talent, she was highly valued by the Du Xian sect and had been accepted into the lineage of the head of the Broken Sky Peak early on. Qin Xianya is also going to the North Continent? That's not bad. Li Changshou showed a faint smile in the corner. Traveling with such an attention grabber would make him less noticed. Lan Lingyi sniffed a few times and immediately smelled something unusual. Her gaze moved back and forth between her senior brother's smile and the girl in the fiery red fairy dress. There must be something going on. She heard a little discussion from the crowd. "Sister Xianya is going to the North Continent to gather herbs?" "Sister Xianya is going to the North Continent. It seems that brother Yuan Qing is also going to the North Continent. Isn't this a matter of course? Didn't you see that brother Yuan Qing hasn't moved? He must be waiting for Sister Xianya to make a decision. Be careful with your words and guard your heart. Don't offend these 2 cultivation geniuses of the Broken Sky Peak." In the air, Gu Elder frowned at the pair of senior brother and sister. Li Changshou and Lan Lingyi shook his head slightly, and continued to shout loudly, "Those who are going to the southeastern chaotic poison forest of the North Continent, wait in the hall. This place is very dangerous, and disciples often get hurt. The minimum requirement is the 9th level of spiritual transformation." The girl in the fiery red dress opened her eyes. Her phoenix eyes were quite clear. She lightly tapped the ground with her toes, her skirt swayed with the wind, like a blooming fire spirit flower, attracting gazes as she floated into the hall. Following her closely was a young chi refinement cultivator who looked gentle and elegant, but his aura was at the 5th level of returning to void. His eyes were always on the fiery figure in front of him. Naturally, he was that brother Yuan Qing. Li Changshou also stepped forward at the same time. Because Qin Xianye and Yuan Qing had attracted everyone's attention, he wasn't noticed by others at the moment, which made him feel quite comfortable, but after he had taken only 2 steps, he suddenly shivered. A pair of resentful eyes followed him like a shadow. Senior brother, why do you suddenly want to go to the North Continent? Li Changshou felt a chill on his back, stopped, turned around and said in a deep voice, of course, I'm going to collect herbs. Senior brother? Don't we have enough herbs at home? You, little Lingyi of Cheong Peak. Suddenly a voice called out from the air. It was Gu Elder, frowning at the pair of senior brother and sister. He asked, are you still planning to participate in this practice trip? Yes. Lan Lingyi raised her head and answered, feeling some blush on her face as she noticed the gazes from around. Just now she was like a chilling wind locking thousands of miles, but now she was like spring warmth meeting blooming flowers. Her change of expression was quite natural. She hurriedly said, thank you for your concern, Elder. My cultivation is still shallow, and I was a little indecisive just now. Now I have decided to go to the Eastern Sea with my senior brothers and sisters. Gu Elder nodded, showing a kind smile, and said warmly, hurry back to your formation. Don't delay the good time to set off. Yes. Lan Lingyi breathed a sigh of relief secretly. When she turned to find her senior brother, he was already gone. Why does he have to go to such a dangerous place? She pouted her lips, complaining softly, he didn't even say take care. Be careful, stinky senior brother. When she turned around, Lan Lingyi had already resumed her normal expression, heading towards the crowd in the distance. Coming towards her were several smiling geniuses from various peaks. Inside the hall, a dozen gazes fell on Li Changshou in the corner. Most of them were doubtful, not knowing who he was. Li Changshou quietly released his aura, the 9th level of spiritual transformation, just making the cut. Yuan Qing, Xianye, you two are ranked 2nd and 6th among the disciples of this generation in terms of cultivation level. Why are you rushing to gather herbs? Du Linfeng, Lu Yener, and Wang Qi from Shaolingfeng. They are also among the top 20 talents of this generation. Why are they all rushing to Luanchaobo Forest? Is our sect becoming stingy with its young disciples? North Juluzhou is not a good place. No one went there the last 2 times. At the corner of the Baifan Hall, a drunken female immortal tilted her head, stared at Li Changshou who was standing behind the 4 dazzling young disciples, then looked down at the bamboo strip in her hand, looked up at Li Changshou, repeated this twice. Her expression gradually darkened. Xiao Cheong Peak, Li Changshou, what is your cultivation level? Why are you going to Luanchaobo Forest just after reaching the 9th stage of transformation? Go, go, go. Go to the East Sea to fight those shrimp demons. The female immortal spoke straightforwardly without any regard for face saving, but what she said was quite reasonable and obviously considers Li Changshou's safety. The female immortal wore 2 large and small wine gourds on her waist, and her clothes were very simple: trousers, short shirts, short light brown hair. Among the group of female chi practitioners with long, flowing hair, she was a rare anomaly. Her image and temperament were very similar to those of the miscellaneous disciples in the sect who had been exhausted from labor and had given up on themselves. Fortunately, her slender waist tied with a cloth strip, the short hemp shirt about to burst, and the occasional slight pressure from her body made it clear that she was a powerful female immortal. This person was called Jojo, a disciple of the Petian Peak. She looked like she was in her early 20s, but she was actually 800 or 900 years old and had been an immortal for over 600 years. She was a top-notch existence among the disciples who entered the sect at the same time as her, and now she could stand on her own. The only one who went to the Luanchaobo Forest in North Juluzhou was her, which shows her extraordinary strength. Li Changshou's face was solemn, and he bowed to the famous wine immortal, saying, Uncle Master Zhou, I need to find a few herbs, one of which can only be found in North Juluzhou. I'm sorry to trouble Uncle Master Zhou this time. What kind of herb? The female immortal curled her lips, a slight look of disdain on her pretty face. I had some connections with your master back then. Take this, go find Elder Qi Ling from the Taoist treasury. While speaking, the female immortal took out a jade piece from her wine-stained short shirt and casually threw it to Li Changshou. Just say it's from my monthly supply. Go get the herbs you're looking for. North Juluzhou is a place for you, a 9th stage transformation cultivator, to go. If you really die there, I'll have my wine money deducted for 10 years, and your useless master might come over crying. Just thinking about it annoys me to death. The 2 men and 2 women nearby were slightly surprised, their eyes falling on the jade piece. The identity jade card of an elder in the sect was so easily given to a 9th stage transformation disciple from a different peak. Uncle Master, Li Changshou gave a bitter smile, holding the jade piece and taking 2 steps forward, returning the jade piece to the female immortal. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to take risks in North Juluzhou either, but I have no choice this time. According to the sect's rules, Uncle Master can't refuse the request of a disciple to go out for practice. Please grant me this favor. Jiao frowned slightly, staring at the young man in front of her who was bowing his head, snorted, and snatched the jade piece back. Really? Who are you, Yuan Qing, Xianya? The girl in the fiery red fairy dress and the gentle young Qi practitioner both bowed their hands in response. Disciple is here. Jiao said unhappily, if you two have spare capacity, help take care of him. Disciple obeys, Yuqin Xianya responded with a poker face. Uncle Master, rest assured, Yuan Qing gave Li Changshou a somewhat friendly look, and the smile at the corner of his mouth was quite gentle. I will definitely take good care of junior brother Changshou. Jiao couldn't help but hold her forehead, complaining to Li Changshou, he entered the sect earlier than you and Xianya. Really, how did you do it, Li Changshou, practicing for more than 100 years and still not reaching the returning void stage? Yuan Qing looked embarrassed, but quickly bowed his hands. I'm sorry, don't blame me, senior brother Changshou. Li Changshou shook his head with a smile, feeling a bit emotional in his heart. The poker-faced girl and the warm-hearted man, this pair is quite a good match, but it has nothing to do with him. Li Changshou suddenly felt two not very friendly gazes. He didn't explore anything, calmly thanked Jiao, then turned and bowed to Yuqin Xianya and Yuan Qing, then retreated to the back of the four, standing quietly. Those two gazes naturally came from the other two people, Lu Yenner, dressed in a light yellow luo skirt, and Wang Qi, dressed in a green Taoist robe, are both top-ranked returning void stage experts among the disciples of this generation, two excellent immortal seedlings. Their gazes just now didn't carry much goodwill, but they didn't have much malice either. At most they were a bit disdainful. Li Changshou stood quietly, listening to the continuous sound of breaking through the air outside, as batches of disciples rose into the air under the protection of the immortals. He also split a strand of spiritual sense to check the several storage magic tools on his body. Li Changshou did bring several storage magic tools. It's not that he has a habit of being good at organizing, to categorize the storage of pills, magic tools, etc. The items stored in these storage magic tools are actually all the same: pills, magic tools, spirit stones, etc., all divided into three parts. The bracelet on his left wrist is the main storage magic tool, in case of emergencies. The pendant on his neck is the backup storage magic tool, in case of emergencies. The cloth bag tied to his thigh is the backup plus backup storage magic tool. Going out for practice, it's always right to be prepared, especially when going to dangerous places like North Juluzhou. This time, Li Changshou also brought most of his family's belongings. The other half was given to his junior sister for self-defense. Half a day later, a giant gourd slowly ascended in front of the palace. Jiao, the immortal, stood above the gourd's mouth, arms folded, exuding an impressive aura. Several young disciples stood silently at various points on the gourd, all standing firmly. Once the gourd flew out of the grand array, the immortal Jiao formed a seal with both hands, and the gourd released strands of pale green light, setting up a thin membrane that isolated the external wind. Then, she pointed her finger in the northwest direction, and the wine gourd began to slowly accelerate. Relax, don't be so tense, there are fewer rules outside the mountain gate. Jiao yawned and sat down at the mouth of the gourd, her legs dangling on either side of the gourd's mouth. With a satisfied smile on her face, she reached for the wine gourd around her waist. She took a slow sip, a faint blush appearing on her face. She let out a contented sigh into the wind, exuding a sense of satisfaction and comfort. Then she turned her head to look at the 5 young disciples behind her. The furthest from her was Li Changshou, sitting at the rear of the gourd. Li Changshou maintained a rigid posture, unlike the others who were meditating. He held 2 yellow paper charms with the tip of his left finger. Lu Yenner and Wang Qi were meditating in the middle of the gourd. Closest to Jiao was Yuqin Xianya, who was meditating a foot behind Jiao, with her large sword lying in front of her. Behind Yuqin Xianya, the elegant Yuan Qing said softly, "Junior sister, this time I will definitely help you find the fire heart grass." Yuqin Xianya frowned slightly and said indifferently, "Brother Yuan Qing, you don't need to bother for me. This is my personal cultivation matter, no one else needs to interfere." Yuan Qing smiled gently. An extra person always means an extra opportunity. Yuqin Xianya didn't say much. She continued to meditate, surrounded by a flame-like aura, beautiful from every angle. Ah, Jiao laughed at the side, winking at Yuan Qing. Yuan Qing made a helpless expression, continued to meditate 3 feet behind Yuqin Xianya. The smile on his corner of the mouth gradually faded. Ah, another drama of unrequited love. Jiao took another sip of the immortal brew, savoring the lingering taste, but reluctantly hung the gourd back around her waist. She leaned against the edge of the gourd's mouth, looking up at the clouds in the blue sky, slightly lost in thought. After a while, Jiao couldn't help but reach for the gourd around her waist, but hesitated and paused, then said, "It will take 2 days and 3 nights to fly to Beijing. Are you planning to meditate all the way? That Wang Qi, sing a song for your master." "Master Jiao." Wang Qi from the back hurriedly said, "I don't know how to sing." Jiao immediately showed a look of disgust, "Then who knows how to? Changshou, can you?" Li Changshou shook his head with a serious look, and instead used the method of sound transmission to remind Jiu, Master, there seems to be a figure in the clouds behind us. Really? Jiu looked up and replied to Li Changshou without changing her expression, in the vast land of the 5 continents, there are countless chi practitioners who can fly and escape, don't make a fuss. We are not far from our Taoist gate. Despite saying this, Jiu still spread her divine consciousness, and after a while, the giant gourd began to slow down steadily. After a while, the big gourd hovered in the air motionless. Jiu sat there loosely as ever and shouted, I don't know why the Taoist friend who has been following us for so long is interested. Immediately, the 4 people meditating on the gourd opened their eyes, and Li Changshou, who had been observing the rear, retracted his right hand into his sleeve, holding his storage device tightly. From the clouds in the back, a burly figure flew out. This man was dressed in chain mail, with a rough face, and a solid and thick aura all over his body. He carried a huge axe on his back, an immortal. Li Changshou sensed carefully, this person seemed not to have been an immortal for long, and did not give him much pressure. 100 feet apart, the burly man saluted Jiu and said loudly, I am the front guard of the Honglin Kingdom of the Eastern Divine State, specially here to protect the 6th princess. If there is any offense, please forgive me, immortal. The 6th princess. Jiu tilted her head and looked at the 2 female disciples behind her. Li Changshou's gaze instinctively fell on Lu Yenner, who had a slightly round face and a bit of a mundane aura, but Lu Yenner looked directly at the other young female disciple. Yuqin Xianye said in a very cold tone, go back, don't bother with me. A princess? A palace guard, appearing suddenly when they were about to go to Beiju Luzhou. Li Changshou sniffed lightly, sensing some kind of cliché. Your Highness, I am here under the command of our sovereign, it would be difficult for me to return without accomplishing the task. Recently, our adversaries have been behaving suspiciously. Our sovereign is concerned that they might make a covert move against you. Your Highness, I beg your permission to accompany you on your journey. Once you return to Duxian Gate, I will return. Yuqin Xian frowned slightly. Her originally expressionless beautiful face now bore a hint of helplessness. Yuan Qing interjected, Sister Xianye, we are headed towards Beiju Luzhou, a place fraught with danger. Having General Yuan with us would provide an extra layer of protection. Li Changshou suddenly spoke, did you know this general before, Brother Yuan Qing? I didn't hear him introduce himself just now. Yes, indeed, Yuan Qing glanced at Li Changshou and smiled, Sister Xianye and I grew up together and both entered Duxian Gate. This general is named Yuan Ling, he is the most trusted general of Sister Xianye's father. He is usually responsible for guarding the king. His presence here clearly indicates that the situation is indeed precarious. So, the stoic lady and the warm-hearted man were childhood friends. Li Changshou clasped his hands in a formal greeting, I apologize for my earlier remarks. Princess, Yuan Ling frowned and called out. While Yuqin Xian looked at Jiu, who was lying on the mouth of the gourd, her eyes pleading. No worries, Jiu, the immortal, waved his hand from the edge of the gourd mouth, his voice somewhat languid, since he's your guard, let him come along. A newly ascended immortal like him won't cause any trouble with us, you, big fellow, sit at the back of the gourd. Don't make any noise later. It's actually inappropriate for you to come along, but there's no rule in the gate that disciples can't have their own guards when they go out. Yuan Ling bowed, thank you, immortal. After speaking, this burly man with his giant axe floated to the back of the gourd. Jiu pointed a finger, and the surrounding immortal light of the gourd slowly opened a gap. Seeing this, Li Changshou quietly moved a few steps to the side, then circled around to the front of the gourd again. Uncle Jiu, may I sit behind you? Jiu was both amused and exasperated. What, are you still shy at your age? Come and sit. Your master said you are a cautious person, he certainly wasn't wrong. Brotherly, please sit here. Yuqin Xian stood up, smiled apologetically at Li Changshou, and voluntarily took 2 steps back. Thank you, Li Changshou nodded, disregarding the 2 sharp glances behind him, and calmly sat in Yuqin Xuan's former position. These 2 glances came from Lu Yenner and Wang Qi. They were clearly dissatisfied with Li Changshou's exclusivity, feeling that it was a loss of their Duxian Gate disciples' demeanor. Li Changshou chose to ignore them. Jiu, the immortal, continued to pilot the gourd into the sky towards the north. Lu Yenner and Wang Qi seemed to want to ridicule Li Changshou, so they specifically went to talk to Yuan Ling. However, Yuan Ling, the burly man, was a man of few words. The conversation between the 3 was awkward, with several moments of silence. It wasn't until Yuan Qing joined the conversation that the atmosphere became more relaxed. Li Changshou didn't even look at them, his right hand was always tucked in his sleeve, and his spiritual sense was scattered around him. Before deciding to go to Beiju Luzhou himself, Li Changshou had thought deeply and had asked his familiar steward of Baifan Hall in advance. The immortal in charge of escorting the disciples for this practice was Jiu, who had been in charge of this direction several times before. Jiu's cultivation is not yet 1,000 years, but his strength is extraordinary, and he has a set of powerful spells, and several powerful magic weapons given by the head of the gate. It is said that his cultivation realm is already close to the realm of the celestial immortal. The normal stages of cultivation for a chi practitioner after becoming an immortal are yuan immortal, true immortal, celestial immortal, golden immortal, great luo, and primordial chaos. This is called the path of the celestial immortal. More importantly, Jiu is one of the few immortals in the gate who has some relationship with his master. Li Changshou originally thought that there were few people going to Beiju Lu Zhou for practice. With this immortal protecting them, it would be much safer than going to Beiju Lu Zhou alone, but he didn't expect this situation to crop up all of a sudden. With a glance at Yuan Qing and Yuan Ling from the corner of his eye, Li Changshou thought to himself, closed his eyes slowly, and was in no mood to cultivate. He remained ready to use the wind escape technique at any time. Thankfully, being close to Uncle Joe gave him a sense of security. Huh? He. Just a sip, we're still far away, it won't affect anything. The wine immortal sitting on the gourd's mouth let out a strange laugh, took a sip from his own wine gourd, his face instantly turned rosy, and he even licked his lips with satisfaction. Li Changshou, perhaps it would be best to find an excuse to leave the group and go alone, God help me. No words for half a day. As the sun set and twilight fell, the sky was filled with stars. Sitting atop this gourd, more than 10 meters long, surrounded by the elusive radiance of immortality and with faint scent of wine wafting to his nose, Li Changshou held a bamboo scroll and read it silently. The others had already entered their meditative states, including Yuan Ling who sat at the very back. Jiu, with her eyes half open, reclined at the front of the large gourd, letting the wind tousle her slightly messy short hair. Her demeanor was indeed different from the usual image of immortals. One could say she was full of character. Li Changshou quietly relished the Taoist techniques recorded in the scroll, contemplating how these techniques would operate. However, his psychic senses around him were not withdrawn and continued to monitor the vicinity within a 10-meter radius. Thanks to deliberate training before, this wasn't a burden to him. A wine gourd suddenly appeared in his sight. Li Changshou, with a serious expression, shook his head and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Aunt Master, but I'm not good at drinking." Boring. Jiu rolled her eyes, hopped off the stopper of the gourd mouth, and sat on the edge of the gourd mouth, gently swinging her slender legs, the cleanest part of her body. After belching, Jiu casually asked, "Changshou, your master, he's about to become an immortal, right? The tribulation should happen in 3 to 5 years." Li Changshou put the scroll on his lap, looking at Jiu, who happened to be one of the few people who had visited the Shaoqiang Peak over the past 100 years. Sigh. Jiu sighed, deliberately speaking with a tone of old age, teaching Li Changshou with her back turned, "We used to get along well. It's a pity about your master. He had decent talent, but after being injured once, his Dao foundation was damaged, and it's still not fully recovered. Changshou, in fact, don't look at your master who hasn't become an immortal yet. His understanding of our Dao techniques in Du Xian Gate is not inferior to any 1,000-year-old immortal. Aunt Master, you shouldn't say that." Li Changshou showed a slight smile, and his eyes squinted slightly. This was an expression he rarely showed in front of people other than his master and junior sister. Li Changshou said, "My master has always devoted all his teachings to me and my junior sister. For us, the master is like our parents. Speaking of which, how did you cultivate? After so many years, you're only at the 9th stage of God transformation. Can't you comprehend the revert vacuity?" Jiu turned her head and glared at Li Changshou. "When I just started, I heard people say that you Shaoqiang Peak has bad luck, and it seems that they are right. Give me your hand, let me check your talent." "I remember your talent is pretty good, don't tell me your clueless master messed you up." Li Changshou frowned immediately. Although Jiu meant well, but, if she touched him to probe, and she was a true immortal expert, his cultivation level hidden by the technique would definitely be exposed. Jiu had already stretched out her right hand, which was emitting a scent of wine. Li Changshou subconsciously moved his buttocks backwards, smiled awkwardly and said, "Aunt Master, it's not appropriate for men and women to have physical contact. Men and women should not have physical contact." "Who said that? I've never heard of it." Jiu immediately looked disgusted. "We cultivators pursue freedom and leisure in the world, why should we care about those messy etiquettes of the secular world? Come on, give me your hand, did you make some mistakes in your cultivation? I remember your talent is pretty good, isn't it?" "Aunt Master, this is not very appropriate. I suddenly developed a disease a few years ago where I will have convulsions all over my body when I touch a woman." Li Changshou instantly stood up, moved his feet, and his body, accompanied by 2 afterimages, appeared directly behind Yuqin Xianya, looking at Jiu with a bitter smile on his face. Jiu blinked, as if she had discovered something. The way this guy changed his body just now, wandering dragon probing cloud step. "Well done, kid, you've learned such a difficult step." Jiu's expression suddenly became a bit strange. "Your master said that you are only interested in escape techniques, don't tell me that you have spent these more than 100 years, all on this." "I have always worked hard in cultivation, never slack, huh?" This soft touch, looking down at the slender finger gently poking his inner thigh, Li Changshou instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Following the slender finger, there was a smooth and white jade arm, as if it was carved out of mutton fat white jade. Going further up, there was a red shoulder strap, collar, and a beautiful face that was slightly tilted and looked a bit curious. Yuqing Xianya. A few years ago, I suddenly developed a disease where I will have convulsions all over my body when I touch a woman. Li Changshou's mouth twitched violently, but he made a decision almost instantly. He was a tough guy. At this moment, he didn't care about his image at all, and his body began to tremble slightly. He gritted his teeth and controlled his muscles to twist. His face was in pain, his eyes rolled upwards, and his mouth frothed. Damn it, Yuqing Xianya, aren't you an iceberg, heartless? My earlier offense was unintentional. I ask for your understanding, senior brother. Seated at the front of the giant gourd, Li Changshou's face was serene, looking at the bowing Yuqing Xianya in front of him. Although he wanted to complain, he could only utter a few words of reassurance. Li Changshou felt that the gazes resting on him no longer carried the previous disdain and dissatisfaction, but rather, they were filled with sympathy and pity. Changshou, Jiu the immortal coughed lightly, speaking with a grave tone, this must be your inner demon, possibly cultivated from your years of secluded cultivation with your master in the mountains. Senior brother Changshou, Yuan Qing floated over from the side, offering a bottle of elixir. This is a clear heart-calming spirit elixir, it may be beneficial for your condition. Thank you, I appreciate your kindness. With a somewhat awkward smile, Li Changshou thanked him. Yuan Qing seemed to understand something and skillfully changed the subject. Taking this opportunity, Li Changshou also observed the reactions of the others. Yuan Ling, throughout the entire commotion, sat quietly, meditating, showing great composure. Lu Yenner's gaze carried a bit more sympathy towards him, while Wang Qi looked at him with a gaze full of emotion. The general sentiment was, this senior, junior, brother, with his average cultivation talent and inner demons, would find it luxurious to even seek a cultivation partner in the future. How difficult the life of cultivation must be for him. The practice of seeking cultivation partners was quite common within the degree immortal sect. Yuan Qing made some small talk before retreating to the back of the gourd. Wang Qi took the initiative to strike up a conversation. Li Changshou responded with a smile throughout, not saying much. He felt that apart from Yuan Qing, these fellow disciples who were solely focused on cultivation, although advanced in years, had surprisingly simple minds. Indeed, these were the top students among their generation of disciples. Spending most of their time on cultivation and having little social interaction, the commotion quickly came to an end. Before long, the gourd once again fell quiet. Everyone continued to meditate. Li Changshou picked up the scroll again, reading with great interest. His mood was not affected. Jiu the immortal, with her arms crossed, sat at the very front, deep in thought. She was considering how to help Li Changshou overcome his inner demons and return to a joyous life of cultivation. Could it be, using the charm of a woman? Fight poison with poison? Jiu the immortal glanced down at her own ample bosom, followed by a series of strange chuckles. Suddenly adding this new setting to himself, Li Changshou didn't pay it much mind. Although this was only a temporary measure to avoid being examined by his master for his cultivation level and talent, he would be mindful of this detail on the journey ahead. Continuing to be vigilant wasn't a difficult task for Li Changshou. Senior brother Changshou, a call came from behind him. Li Changshou turned his head to see Yuqing Xuanya's apologetic face. Although Li Changshou wanted to say, please maintain the dignity and pride that an ice queen should have, he could only manage a slight smile, waving his hand to indicate that she didn't need to say more, and turned back to his reading. Yuqing Xuanya pursed her lips, the guilt in her eyes never fading. Li Changshou's keen spiritual sense caught that Yuan Qing, who was meditating behind him, slightly furrowed his brows. 2 days later, the vast and sparsely populated East Victory divine continent, full of immortal sects, was gradually left behind. Along the way, the giant gourd flew through the clouds, day and night without stopping, finally reaching the northwest border of East Victory divine continent. Li Changshou had not cultivated throughout the journey, keeping his attention within the vicinity, occasionally catching sight of figures flying in the sky. At the edge of his vision, fortunately, they encountered no obstacles along the way. Jiu stretched lazily, and the gourd began to slow down, descending towards the towering mountains below. Jiu the immortal yawned, and called out to the disciples behind her, get ready, we're about to enter the boundaries of Buzhou. Listen well, all of you, Buzhou is not a good place, and you're also here for experience. Don't risk your lives for treasures or spiritual herbs. Next, I'll take you to an entrance to Buzhou. Remember this place, in case you want to come to Buzhou on your own in the future, don't foolishly wander around. The 5 disciples stood up, bowed to Jiu, and said in unison, we will obey your teachings, master. Jiu nodded in satisfaction. Lu Yenner asked softly, master, isn't Buzhou one of the 4 great continents? Why is there an entrance? Could it be that the miasma here has formed a natural large array? Jiu curled her lips, saying indifferently, who knows why? Explain to her. Yuan Qing from the back laughed and said, the miasma of Buzhou, for a cultivator at the returning void stage who has already formed an inner celestial circuit, is not hard to resist. The most troublesome thing here is the poisonous insects and poisonous plants born from the miasma, as well as the ferocious beasts and poisonous beasts that appear everywhere, which are extremely difficult to deal with. Not answering the question. Jiao rolled his eyes and scolded Yuan Qing. She asked why there is an entrance, and what are you answering? Yuan Qing could only smile awkwardly and bow his hands in embarrassment. Yuan Ling said solemnly, because of the demon race. Right, because of the demon race, the big-headed general is quite knowledgeable. Jiao looked down and controlled the big gourd to fall towards a valley in the mountains, and said solemnly, the fate of the human race converges in the southern continent, and Baijiluzu is the place where the witch race is exiled. In ancient times, in order to support the falling sky, several saintly masters cut off the 4 feet of a giant Xian turtle and made them into pillars of heaven. The Xian turtle died of resentment and depression, and its huge body and vast magical power turned into the lingering miasma of Baijiluzu. If you look towards the northwest, that's not a rain cloud. Everyone looked towards the northwest at the same time. At this time, they were about to land in the mountains, and they could just see the rolling gray-black clouds on the horizon, endless and vast. Jiao continued, the miasma gave birth to many poisonous insects and poisonous plants, which deterred ordinary creatures from approaching, and thus became the place where many exotic flowers and fruits thrive. There are all kinds of ferocious and poisonous beasts inside, even the celestial beings dare not venture too deep. After the war between the witches and monsters, the remnants of the witch race were exiled to this place. They went to the extreme north of Baijiluzu, where it was icy and snowy, with fewer insects and beasts, and could barely survive. But it is said that they are on the verge of extinction, which is indeed miserable, and those demon races who harbor hatred towards the witch race, as well as the demon races chased away by our human cultivators, all gathered towards the border of Baijiluzu over time. This narrow area that stretches from east to west for hundreds of thousands of miles has become the most important habitat for the demon race. When he introduced this, Jiao looked at the expressions of the disciples and found that, except for Li Changshou, they were all more or less tense. The effect is good, let's push harder. Jiao gave a chuckle and said solemnly, look around these mountains, there are countless big monsters and old monsters, some of whom are extremely powerful and like to eat human cultivators. Everyone was even more vigilant. And Li Changshou just nodded calmly and continued to gaze down. Jiao felt bored and pointed to the town below, continuing with a blank expression. The town below is one of the entrances to Baijiluzu forcibly opened by our human masters. It has been said to be in a truce with the demon race for thousands of years, and I don't know when they will start fighting again. When we enter the town later, I will take you to buy some miasma-avoiding talismans and detoxifying pills. Although there are these things inside the door, I don't know who set the broken rule that you have to experience the life of a cultivator and teach you to barter. Remember, you can't mess around in the sky above this town. There are several masters here, and you should always have a sense of awe towards the strong. We will descend from the southeastern slope and walk a mountain road. The 5 disciples bowed their hands and took to heart the admonitions of Master Jiao. This town as a whole is in a valley, and the cliffs on both sides of the valley have been cut into caves, and many plank roads and wooden buildings have been built. The valley is filled with various buildings, which look very messy from a distance. There are magnificent and bright halls, towering pagodas, but more are wooden and earthen buildings. Overall, without any planning, only some narrow streets and lanes that can barely pass. Of course, most of the cultivators are flying in midair and don't need to walk. It can be seen that there are actually quite a few cultivators going to Baijiluzu. There are many people coming and going here, and many wooden and earthen buildings have cultivators setting up stalls on the roof, where you can find many medicinal herbs and treasures produced in Baijiluzu. These medicinal herbs and treasures are mostly related to the word poison. Jiao knew the way and urged out a white cloud, leading the 5 disciples and Yuan Ling to turn half a circle in the town. They compared left and right at several stalls before letting them take out spirit stones and buy some good and cheap pills and talismans. Huh? Why isn't this guy moving? Jiao glanced at Li Changshou, who had been standing behind him with his hands behind his back, sighed in his heart, casually threw a purse over his shoulder, and hit Li Changshou's chest. This kind of purse is the simplest storage magic weapon, usually used to store a fixed amount of spirit stones. Jiao complained, I knew your master didn't give you much, and I don't understand why he insists on guarding that little peak. Detoxifying pills and miasma avoiding talismans are necessary preparations, go and buy them quickly, don't dawdle as a big man. Li Changshou was stunned, looked up at his unpretentious uncle in front of him, and showed a gentle smile. This kind of smile, he only shows in front of his master and junior sister. He was about to explain that he had prepared everything in advance, but before he could say it, a slender hand came over, holding a stack of yellow talismans and 2 fat-bellied porcelain bottles. It was the girl in the red dress with a big sword on her back. Qin Xianya turned her head to look elsewhere, trying to sound as calm as possible. This is an apology to senior brother. Before, while speaking, she flicked her fingers and used a clever force to send the pills and talismans directly into Li Changshou's hands, then turned around and walked to a stall nearby as if nothing had happened. Li Changshou found it amusing, bowed to her back, and didn't say much.